Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first class about wine training. Like there are so many things going on. I know that like now maybe this is the best time we figure it out for you to start and get a little bit more knowledgeable when it comes to wine and also how to sell wine. So this is actually is going to be focused on wine sales and also it gives you a good, I hope, a good overview for you about wine grapes. So let's get it started. And yeah, in this class, basically, I wanna help you, giving you some suggestion about how to suggest wine to a guest. Of course, there are many different categories of guests, I divided based on my experience in four: people with no knowledge of wine, people with some knowledge of wine, people that believe that they know everything about wine, and people who never know what to choose. Of course, this is with each of them, you're gonna behave differently according to what are your feeling and your judgment. So let's talk about like the first category, people with some knowledge about wine. Of course, the pictures that I picked, I don't know if you had a chance to recognize him. He's Bruce Wallner, master sommelier, maybe no, for sure one of the most knowledgeable person in all Canada, in North America, about wine. So usually, what do they have in particular? These people, so they don't like to be in general guided through the list. They don't find if they don't find what they are looking for, they will ask you to find an alternative, and usually they're easy to satisfy, but they can be challenging, especially if they don't find what they want. So, with them, I suggest is never argue with them because, of course, they don't like to be challenged when it comes to wine. Not even like, of course, no, I will never challenge Bruce Wallner, but also don't be intimidated. So make sure that like you manifest your point of view and you tell them, based on what he's asking, what are your suggestions. Is more like an interaction. It's not like a guidance. And if you realize that they are curious, also don't hesitate to offer something that can surprise them. And if there is one point you realize that you are uh, you have no help to do, just come to me, and of course I will try to find a solution as well. Um, then, second category of people with no wine knowledge. Usually, they don't you will recognize immediately because they don't use the right descriptor to describe the wine. Most of the time, just a very very common thing. They use a sweet instead of fruity to describe a wine that, of course, tastes like with the fruits. They are not very curious about colors. What I notice, usually they stuck with one or two, well, one white and one red, and they always wanted to have they are not very curious, and also because when they try, they don't like the wine that they have. So in that scenario, you take the lead. Make sure always to ask what type of wine they usually like to drink, because it doesn't make any sense to offer a particular wine. Just to give an example, an Etna Rosso or an Etna Bianco. Try to play simple. Don't show off your knowledge, because in that scenario, it doesn't make any sense to show that you are knowledgeable. Also, because you're gonna waste a lot of time. Play safe. Stick to the classic without offering something too unique. So most of the time, this is what I call those Pinot Grigios and the cab crowd. They like kind of easy to drink wine. They are not very fussy, but don't forget, they never taste with their nose. They always taste with their just with their palate. So they swirl a glass and they without even sniff what is in a glass, and then they directly drink and they say, oh, it's sweet, oh, it's acidic, and they also, their vocabulary and their palate is not calibrated to describe what is actually sweet and salty, because it's very not according to what the sommelier and wine connoisseurs are used to. Here we are. People who believe they know about wine, but actually they don't. Possibly those are the most difficult guests. Usually they are very confused when they describe the wine. They like to taste than one wine at a time. So possibly they are going to start telling you, oh, I don't like this one, I don't like that one, you know. And this is not actually something that is based on accurate judgment about the wine, but like they like to, they're very uh, difficult to please. So with them, don't be offer more than one option, one by the glass. Tell them, that like we have this one, we have that one, but like, of course, don't offer a wide range of options because otherwise they will drink as much as they could. Accept the challenge and be confident. Don't let them step over you. And always listen their requests in order to detect their preference. It's very important sometimes that you know what they like. And in that case, you direct your choice according to what they ask. Then, people who never know what to choose. Another difficult kind of a guest. They spend a lot of time, reading the wine list, trying to get some information, but so most of the time they don't know what they are looking for. Especially, I will say that like in an Italian restaurant there are so many grapes, and they don't even know what we are talking about. It's very difficult for them to detect Grillo, Catarato, to know the difference between the two grapes, or even know about Dolcetto, Grignolino, as it comes to Piedmont. So they want you to decide, so don't let them decide because it will take forever, and most of the time, you're going to get busy, and you don't have enough time. Then explain your choice and let them know that you are able to guide them through the wine list. So you take the choice and you give them not too many options, because if those people, they don't know what to choose, if they give them a wide range of options, they are going to be in the same scenario as before. So you just give them two options, this one and this one. And sometimes, talk about your experiences. Sometimes talk about the fact, oh, I had the same for problem. I don't like this kind of wine, being like a very accommodative with them, telling them like sharing, oh yeah, you're right, this wine actually, I don't like the sweet wine. So this is why I always recommend this kind of a wine to the guests that they don't like that type of wine. Basic principle to suggest the right wine. There are actually two categories: wine lovers and wine novice. With the lovers, of course, people who are knowledgeable use the food and wine pairing principle. Be flexible, always try to adapt your choices according to their preferences, and always try to leave the guest pleasantly surprised. Don't forget, if you have a person that is actually very curious and knowledgeable about wine, they like to be surprised. So take a chance. Most of the time, those people, if you recognize them, they will never return a bottle. So they will say, "Oh, okay," because for them, a wine is a journey. For wine novice, instead, the situation could be a little bit more complicated. Apply the new world wine versus the old world wine theory. Always ask, what they like to drink, because it's very important. If those people are not knowledgeable, maybe they are stuck with two or three kind of wine, and you are going to limit their decision to few kind of a wine that they're going to work for them. Otherwise, you're going to run nowhere for a long time. Don't get stuck with traditional wine and food pairings. So in that case, in that scenario, there is no way you can offer, oh, with this tagliatelle bolognese, I would suggest this one because they pair well, and the acidity and the tannins, forget about it. Most of the time, you have to try to find their way to be happy. And their way to be happy is they are not even thinking about wine and food pairing. For them, wine and food are two separate things, and you have to choose the wine that they like. It doesn't matter if it's a Moscato pair with a tagliatelle alla bolognese. I know, guys, it's bad, but like it's true. Then let's get it started with a little bit more in-depth overview about wine and food pairing. Wine and food pairings, follow two rules: pairing by opposition and then pairing by concordance. So, in the pairing by opposition, of course, check on the left, on my left, the food, characteristic. The succulence. Succulence is when I would say juiciness. When food is very juicy. Imagine like a steak that comes to mm, your plate, medium rare. Of course, after you start chewing that and bite them, you release a lot of like juice, and this along with the oiliness. Imagine like a even a beef cheeks or something like that. They require alcohol and tannins. Tannins because the tannins dry your mouth. So when you have this kind of a juice coming, you need something that is gonna balance and is gonna contrast. And this is why we use even the alcohol. It basically doesn't allow your mouth to salivate as much. So in that way, you have a lot of juice coming from the food, and you need something to dry your mouth. This is the principle that all the sommelier in the world they use. Then we have a sapidity, bitter tendency, acidic tendency. Sapidity, imagine like a prosciutto, okay? You need a little bit of sweetness and smoothness to the wine. So this is why most of the time you need to have something that actually it's a little bit more smoother to temper the sapidity or those characteristics. They are very angular, I would say. Sweetness in terms of like a sweet tendency of the food in this case. So imagine like a food like sweet potatoes or even like a carrots. They have a natural sweet tendency in their flavor, and you need, in order to counterbalance, something from the wine that has acidity and effervescence. The same thing as greasiness. Imagine like a nice fritto misto of calamari and gamberi, or even like our artichokes and mushrooms. You need a nice prosecco or a wine that is a bright acidity. A Sauvignon Blanc, for example, from New Zealand could be delicious, but also we have a lot of choices. In Italy, even our Grillo could be a very, very, very good suggestion. Let's move to the pairing by concordance instead. In this case, remember, if you have a lot of spiciness, a food is very persistent and it has a lot of aromatic component, it requires the same intensity, aromaticity, and persistency in a wine. So you don't pair a light wine to something that is very aromatic and persistent in terms of flavor. So imagine something that could be the beef cheek, very persistent in terms of flavor. He has a spice, he has like a wine sauce and all these things. You don't pair like with a wine like a muscadet, okay? You need a wine that is actually showing bold, a good aromatic component, okay? And the same thing, so concordance is required when you pair sweet, something sweet. I mean, a dessert. If you have a dessert, you don't pick a dry wine. Choose something sweet as well, because it doesn't make any sense to just mess things up. Difficult pairings. Wine, just to make it brief and short, wine, there are some food that they don't pair with wine. Wine is not actually something very, 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 very extremely good friendly. Artichokes, tomatoes, salad, eggs, chocolate, spicy food. Imagine like a Indian cuisine. It's very difficult to pair Indian cuisine with wine because if you choose a red, just to give you an example, the tannins and the alcohol, they're gonna really fight against all the spice and the hot component coming from the food. And what you have is an enhanced hotness in your mouth that actually doesn't take you anywhere in terms of a pleasure. Um, so remember, most of the times, even with the cheese, beer can be a better companion than wine. But we will look into that, soon. Spicy food. Imagine like induja, the Calabrese Supersata. Would you pair that thing very well with any kind of wine? I don't believe so, because the spiciness of the induja, it doesn't require any wine. Actually, a nice beer with a good carbonation will really clean your mouth, and it will create a better, much better combination of flavors and combination of food and pairing. So spicy food, be careful because wine it doesn't get along with that. This is the new world wines versus the old world wines. Okay, so sometimes I found that this method very useful for you in order to find the right pairing. Ask your guest what kind of wine they like. I say, do you like a new world or old world wine? If they like new world, possibly, they will love something that has more fruit, more alcohol, less minerality, so not as much as earthy. The oak usually is a big component into this wine, so white and reds. And also, whites are very fruity and buttery. Buttery, I means that they went through malolactic fermentation. I recommend everybody, for those of you who are not familiar with malolactic fermentation, to take a look to the video made by the Gilsum and go with that because they are very functional to make a solid foundation about winemaking and also viticulture. Reds and usually for them are big, bold, tannic, and because for them there is the theory that based the new world of wines is that the grapes are very raw material, simply raw material that has to be modeled by the winemaker in the winery. This is the totally opposite of conception that in general dominate the old world where the terroir is the paramount. Don't forget just to give an example, the Camus here we have as an example of a new world is a Cabernet Sauvignon. So they named the grape. When you have here Conterno, Barolo, Barolo is not a grape. Barolo is an appellation, geographical appellation, where Nebbiolo grape actually find its best terroir. There are other appellation that uses 100% Nebbiolo as Barolo, like Barbaresco. But those are geographical appellations. So the terroir is what it leads the classification of the wine, not the grape. Then wine in the old world theory reflect the place where it's produced and is an expression of terroir. Wine are usually more acidic. The tannins are not as ripe as the New World, and also, the use of oak is usually more subtle. Is not You're not gonna get in general a lot of new oak and vanilla flavor into the wine. Reds are in general more savory, more earthy, and more dry. So when you find people say, I like dry wine, maybe they are telling you that they are looking for wine and they are much more used to have old world wine, so from France, from Europe in generally speaking, than wine from New World. That means from US, from Chile, from Australia, from New Zealand. Okay, here we go. This is just to summarize, the characteristic of the grapes. I don't want you to know all the grapes in the world, but there are some grapes that can represent very important parameters, in order to detect what our guests like. Black grapes, I mean red grapes, the grapes that makes a red wine, are divided in generally speaking red fruits. The grape, kind of a grape, and black fruits, grape. Just to give an example, red fruits, Sangiovese, okay? You have beautiful cherry flavor, red cherry. Black fruits instead, Cabernet Sauvignon, black currants, okay? Blackberries, plum. Then, let's start with the red fruits. They are savory kind of a wine, grape, and then fruity. Savory, if I mean Pinot Noir, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, Tempranillo. When it comes to fruity, think about like a dolcetto or think about gamay, which is the grape that gives Beaujolais wines. Then black fruits, you have herbaceousness. You think about a Cabernet Franc, for example, or a Malbec from Argentina. Then fruity can be a Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, and aromatic. Aromatic is more like a Zinfandel if I have to pick one. Um, White grapes instead. The definition and the subdivision are based on neutral, kind of like a flavor. Think about the Chardonnay. Chardonnay is not as very aromatic. You know, you're gonna have a lot of most of the time flavor coming from winemaking technique. Oak, for example, malolactic fermentation. Other wines like Muscadet, they are very neutral, kind of like a mineral and yeasty. And the aromatic component into the wine, instead, think about Riesling, think about Gewürztraminer, think about Viognier, think about Muscat. Okay, those wines have a different characteristic, and those characteristics actually are the most associated, the aromatic components and the fruity components, to sweetness by people who don't know a lot about wine. Okay, don't forget when people are say I don't like a wine that is sweet, forget about Gewürztraminer, forget about Viognier, forget about all of those wine with a kind of aromatic component because cannot can actually be confused by as a sweetness. Go with the Chardonnay, go with the Muscadet, go with the Soave, go with the grape that are more likely to be more mineral and savory in terms of a flavor. Okay, let's talk about like the grapes, and the difference, based on the a new world wine theory, new world wine versus the old world wine theory. In Cabernet Sauvignon is of course is produced in France, old world, and California. Just take these two example. Think about it. Like in old world Cabernet Sauvignon, usually it's a little bit more earthy. It's tannic, but the tannins are not as ripe as a New World. Has a little bit less alcohol compared to a Napa Cab. It's still full body, but like I would say, it's a little bit more balanced by the acidity. In Napa, instead, is luscious. Like the tannins are more ripe. You're gonna have a more like this marmalade flavor coming, a lot of fruit and concentration. Okay. Cabernet Sauvignon profile. Generally speaking, you're going to have a prevalence of black fruit, cassis, blackberry, black cherry, red fruit, but not as much as a black fruit. Then herbaceousness coming from asparagus, eucalyptus, spices, black pepper. You're going to have licorice, anise, and of course, oak. Oak doesn't come, is not an aromatic component that can come from the grape. It's coming from winemaking technique as aging in oak, especially new. Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir is kind of the opposite. As you see, all the colors here is most likely a red fruit, a grape. So, Old World, Burgundy. New World, you're gonna have Oregon, okay, or New Zealand. So, Old World, you're gonna have like maybe the best expression of Pinot Noir. I think you know that I'm more a New World kind of a guy, an Old World kind of a guy. But like the grape is. Very difficult to grow, but then you're gonna have a lot of complexity, minerality, fruit component, yes, but still like the wine is leaning towards a kind of a savory fruit, okay, with acidity kind of a medium plus. When it comes to the New World, in Oregon, I would say you're gonna have a more fruitiness coming versus the minerality and the earthy component. While in New Zealand, instead, you're gonna have like a very crunchy fruit, candy flavor that characterize in general these wines. Flavor profile, red fruit, red cherry, raspberry most likely, floral, you get violet and roses. Spices are a little bit more delicate compared to a Cabernet Sauvignon, peppermint, cinnamon, nutmeg. Also, herbaceous could be with oregano, thyme, rosemary, and sweet aromatics. Vanilla depending if the wine goes through oak or it's very kind of like a woody earthy beautiful wine, a little bit more old world lighter than versus the new world. Syrah, I'm not gonna spend so much time regarding the Syrah because we don't have now a Syrah in our wine list, and also it's not a grape that in Italy is very successful. So except for few spots in Tuscany and also in Sicily. Chardonnay. Let's talk about like the whites. Old world Chardonnay. Think about Chablis. Think about Burgundy. Okay, grapes grown in cool climate tend to have a citrus flavor. Even the apple notes are kind of like a yellow apple, green fruit aromas, wine crisp and acidic, Also with a little bit of oak, but the wine it doesn't have like this kind of buttermilk coming from a new oak that is typical from a malolactic fermentation and aging in oak in New World. In New World, instead, warmer region, you're gonna have a more alcohol into the wine, and it has to produce, of course, a less acidic kind of wine with more full body. Chardonnay is a very popular grape, not very aromatic. You're gonna have a citrusy apple kind of a flavor. In a warm climate, you're gonna have more tropical fruit and also, more alcohol in the New World and buttery kind of popcorn flavor, buttermilk flavor coming from malolactic fermentation, typical of the New World kind of winemaking. Pinot Grigio. Pinot Grigio instead is very typical also in Italy. In Italy, actually, most of the Pinot Grigio is sold to countries like US, Canada. It's not actually a very grape that in Italy we enjoy as much. But the is usually the Pinot Grigio is a quaffable wine, crisp, clean, green apples, a little bit of pear as a main flavor. Not very complicated. Is an easy choice, and we, as an Italian restaurant in Canada, we need to have it. Very different from the Pinot Grigio high end that you can find in certain regions in Italy, as Friuli Venezia Giulia or Trentino Alto Adige. In Very different also from Alsace region, where actually you can find maybe the best Pinot Noir in the world. The acidity there is lower medium versus the medium plus, typical of Italian Pinot Grigio. The amount of alcohol is higher also because Pinot Grigio is actually a grape that produces a lot of alcohol and a lot of amount of sugar. Um, and this, the flavor profile, of course, is very different also in terms of tactile sensation. In general, those wine are more full body. I would say Alsatian Pinot Noir. Delicate flavor in Italy is kind of like more watery, kind of like a citrusy kind of wine, easy to drink. Here we go, Italian red grapes. So don't forget that Italy has a peculiarity in terms of wine, okay? In Italy, basically, there is the majority of grapes cultivated in the world. Um, the most important, here we're going to touch only the most important, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo are maybe the two most important grape in Italian grape. Both red fruits, kind of grape, both lightly colored with the high acidity. Tannins are a little bit different. I would say that the Sangiovese in general is a little bit more granular than the Nebbiolo. The Nebbiolo tannins are a little bit more harsh, and then both are very earthy and very complex wine, and they have a very big, especially Nebbiolo, very good ability to age. Flavor profile in terms of I would say that like the Sangiovese is more cherry forward, fruity, with a little bit of orange peel at the end. Still earthy, kind of sweet spices. The Nebbiolo instead is more like dry fruits, star roses. You're gonna have a licorice tobacco. The tannins are very kind of harsh, especially when it's young. Both are extremely good with truffle, with mushrooms, with the complex dishes. Corvina instead. Corvina is the leading grape for Valpolicella. There are three kinds of Valpolicella Classico, Ripasso, and Amarone. There are three different type of wine. Valpolicella Classico is very quaffable, light body. Amarone can be very bold and very high in alcohol and full body. Here we go. Uh, this wine is still a red fruits component, cherry flavor. The tannins are not very harsh as Nebbiolo, and it's a beautiful grape as well that is cultivated in the northeast of Italy. Barbera instead, kind of acidic kind of grape that can give two different type of wine, a cherry forward in both cases, but with the one with the oak, the Barbera with the oak can be very complex and very similar to an Nebbiolo. The other, the unoaked Barbera instead, can be kind of a pizza, pasta and pizza kind of a wine, quaffable, easy to drink, and it's actually the wine if you go to of Italy in Lombardy that almost in every table. Uh, Croatina and Dolcetta, I'm not going to spend so much time. Aglianico and Nero d'Avola, one of the two most important grapes in the south of Italy. Aglianico, kind of a spicy, dark fruits, very complex with a bright acidity, tannic. Is also nicknamed the Barolo of the South, and has an ability to age that is very remarkable. It can give a wine that are very light, delicate, and savory in terms of flavor, as the one that we have, the Aglianico del Vulture, or wine that are more prosaic, more complex, more bold, and very intense and persistent as a Taurasi. Nero d'Avola, same thing. You can have an easy to drink Nero d'Avola is the one we have that is a kind of a pizza and pasta wine, or you can have like a wine that is able to age with a lot of spices as well, but a little bit more fruity towards the savory notes of the Aglianico, more fruity than Nero d'Avola instead, very complex and a little bit higher in terms of alcohol, but like a wine from the south, a real expression of the Mediterranean climate that characterized the south of Italy. Negramaro, it comes from mavros, meaning black. The dry steel reds usually have dark elements. You're gonna have like a steel black currant, black plums, black licorice, black berries. Also, the wine that we have, the Imori, the Negramaro, is also characterized by oak. So it's a complex wine that usually I would recommend for people who are more into the new world kind of a wine. If you recommend that one, don't worry, they're gonna like it. Especially new world drinkers. Um, Primitivo and Arello Mascalese, two different grapes. Primitivo, kind of more fruity and candish. It could be full body, but it's with a kind of acidity. It accumulates sugar easily. Deep color wines, ripe cherries, strawberries, a lot of fruit coming. If people are telling you that they don't like sweet wines, don't recommend this one. This one can be easily confused and could be easily judged as a sweet wine. Nerello Mascalese instead, think about something in between Pinot Noir from Burgundy or Nebbiolo from Langhe or even a Sangiovese. So those wine is more like an earthy red fruits leading kind of a grape, late ripener, like great ability to express the terroir. Sour cherry, tobacco, aromatic herbs, very mineral and earthy. It goes very well with truffle. It goes very well with the mushrooms. With our tartufate is going to be delicious. It's a wine that has a complexity, ability to age, fantastic expression of volcanic soil where it's cultivated in the south of Italy, especially in Sicily. I mean, here is a map of where you can find those grapes. As you can see, Sangiovese and Montepulciano are mostly cultivated in the center of Italy, while Aglianico, Primitivo, Negro Amaro, Nerello Mascalese, and Nero d'Avola are in the south, and Nebbiolo, Corvina are instead, and Barbera are instead in the north of Italy, with Canonau and Carignano in Sardinia. Canonau, don't forget, is Grenache, okay? So when people are asking for Grenache, we have it actually. Don't say, oh, we don't have a Grenache. We have it. It's a Canonau. Genetically is identical. If people, for example, are asking you for a Zinfandel, we don't have it, but we have it because it's a Primitivo. Genetically is identical. So let's move towards the white. There are, of course, also typical Italian white grapes. I just mentioning the most important. We are going to have a Ribolla. So Ribolla, high quality wine variety, high acidity, hint of a pepper, a little bit of lemon flavor, citrusy flower. Is also the best grape maybe in the world for orange wines. So maybe we're going to have one, but like we will see. Is a wine that we're gonna have for sure the dry version of Ribolla Gialla, beautiful wine that I would recommend. Very good with charcuterie, very good with fish. Fantastic. Garganic as well. We are still in the northeast of Italy because Ribolla Gialla comes from Friuli Venezia Giulia. Garganiga is from Veneto, so very close region. In this case, we have a more like a volcanic soil characterizing those wine. Mineral component wines are very dry. If people are telling you I like dry whites, don't forget to offer our Soave, which is made with 100% Garganega. And then, we have here instead from the west of Italy, Arneis, a little bit more very, very elegant, like a flowery with delicate components of pear, fresh peach, white flowers, almonds. Beautiful wine, it actually reminds me kind of like the white version of a Nebbiolo grape, like very elegant with a good component of alcohol and medium acidity. Central of Italy. I actually mentioned in two grapes. I'm gonna skip a pecorino, Verdicchio, because Verdicchio, it's one of the most important grape of Italy. Bright acidity, lemon zest, sweet almond with a bitter finish. Remember, most of the time Verdicchio could be difficult because people don't like, especially here in North America, they don't like bitter flavor. And sometimes this wine is considered to be bitter. I love Verdicchio. It's actually one of the best product. We are going to have one soon. And then a Vermentino. For people who in generally love Sauvignon Blanc, this is the choice, and they want to try something different. We have a beautiful expression of Vermentino from Sardinia. You can have like a herbal, rosemary, thyme, citrus, peach, a little bit of tropical flavor combined with a good minerality and a good amount of alcohol. So beautiful wine. It pairs very well with the branzino, pairs very well with the charcuterie, pairs very well even with the pizza. South of Italy, we are going to have like a Falanghina, very quaffable, easy to drink, especially the wine, the one that we're going to have soon. Pear, a little bit of like apples, acidity medium plus. A very good wine, actually, very easy to drink. A very good alternative to even Pinot Grigio. Then Fiano and Greco. Greco is a late ripener grape, more structure, more body, and more aromatic component and more complexity. South of Italy, Caricante. Caricante, if you have a curious guest that is asking for Chablis or Burgundy wine connoisseurs, go with this Caricante. Caricante is fantastic. He has I will say, is the Italian version of Chablis. Instead, Grillo is more like for people who love a Sauvignon Blanc as well. Is another version. Is another alternative, fresh, with a little bit more aromatic component, acacia flowers. Very good, like very balanced. We have a very good wine, the Sette Soli, fantastic. Also vegan friendly, so we can. This one is very good with the bruschetta, with even ricotta and figs. Fantastic wine that I will recommend anytime. A very, very good drink. Here is the map where you can find all of these grapes in Italy. As you can see, Arnesi in Piemonte, Garganega, Ribolla Gialla in Friuli, Verdicchio, Marche, the region. Vermentino, you can find it in Liguria, Tuscany, and Sardinia. Grillo, Caricante, Catarato are the main grapes in Sicily. Fiano, Greco di Tufo, and Falanghina instead. You can find it in Campania. For now, this is what I wanted to start getting used to the Italian grape. As you can see, there are so many things that Italian wine can offer, so many alternatives. It's nice if you have a chance to memorize all of this and try those wines when you are at a restaurant. It helps you to memorize the component, the characteristic of these wines, and be more familiar, and also make a better suggestion to our guest. So for this time, everything is pretty much done. I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna say hi to you. As you can see, I'm wearing my mask. I'm here at the restaurant, and I hope you enjoyed our first class. The next will be about the Italian wine. We are going to touch the way we classify the wines, the grapes, and we are going to have three classes, one from north, then the second central Italy, and then south of Italy. And thank you so much for your attention. Looking forward to see you. Have a great time. Bye.